The hospital never truly slept. Even during the quietest hours of the night, when most of the city outside had surrendered to darkness, the building remained alive with a faint mechanical rhythm. The steady hum of fluorescent lights filled the corridors. Air vents whispered softly above the ceilings. Distant machines in the intensive care unit beeped with patient, unwavering precision. It was a soundscape that blended into the background so completely that most daytime workers barely noticed it. But for someone working the night shift, those sounds became something else entirely. They became the voice of the building itself. Miguel Alvarez had learned that within his first week working at St. Catherine's Medical Center. Miguel was 34 years old, a quiet man who carried the exhaustion of life in the careful way he moved through the world. He had spent most of his adulthood working jobs that required little recognition and even less conversation. Before the hospital, he had cleaned offices downtown after closing hours. Empty hallways filled with silent cubicles and dark computer screens. The transition to hospital janitorial work had felt natural enough. The pay was slightly better, and the position came with consistent hours. But more than anything else, Miguel preferred working nights. Daytime shifts meant crowds, hurried conversations, and the constant presence of other people moving around him. The overnight hours allowed him to move through buildings in peace. It allowed him to work at his own pace without anyone watching over his shoulder. The hospital had hired him specifically for the overnight cleaning crew, a small team responsible for sanitizing patient rooms after discharge and maintaining the quiet hallways, while most of the medical staff focused on emergencies and late-night procedures. Miguel's responsibilities were simple but repetitive. Each night, he pushed his cleaning cart through the dim corridors of the 4th floor, wiping down surfaces, changing bed sheets, emptying trash bins, and disinfecting rooms that had been vacated during the evening. The routine rarely changed. The rooms were usually quiet, sometimes still carrying the faint scent of antiseptic and medicine long after patients had left. For the most part, the job was uneventful. Miguel arrived every evening at 11 o'clock, clocked in at the janitorial office, and began his slow circuit through the patient wings. The hospital lights dimmed slightly after midnight, leaving the corridors illuminated in a pale, almost artificial twilight. Nurses moved quietly between stations. Occasionally, a doctor passed through the hallway with hurried footsteps, but those moments were brief interruptions in an otherwise still environment. The 4th floor was typically the calmest section of the hospital. Most of its rooms were reserved for short-term recovery patients who had already stabilized enough to leave the more critical care units. By the time Miguel arrived each night, several rooms were usually empty and waiting to be cleaned before the next patient arrived. For the first 2 months, Miguel simply followed the cleaning checklist assigned to him, moving methodically from one room to the next. It was during the 3rd month that he began noticing the locked door. Room 417 sat at the far end of the 4th floor hallway, tucked into a quiet corner where the corridor curved slightly toward a row of windows overlooking the hospital parking lot. Miguel had walked past the door dozens of times before it truly caught his attention. At first, it seemed like any other unused hospital room, but one small detail made it different. The door remained locked. Every other room Miguel cleaned had an accessible keycard entry, or a door that opened freely for staff. Room 417, however, remained firmly closed each night. The handle never moved. The small observation window embedded in the door was covered with a sheet of frosted film that prevented anyone from seeing clearly inside. The first time Miguel noticed the locked door, he assumed the room was undergoing maintenance. Hospitals constantly rotated rooms for repairs, deep cleaning, or equipment replacement. It was not unusual for a few areas to remain temporarily closed. So he ignored it. Days passed, then weeks. Room 417 remained locked. Miguel's curiosity slowly grew, though he never asked about it directly. Hospitals were full of complicated administrative decisions, and janitorial staff rarely received explanations about restricted areas. Still, the presence of the locked door created a subtle disruption in Miguel's nightly routine. Each time he pushed his cart past the room, his eyes instinctively drifted toward the handle, half expecting someone to emerge from the other side. No one ever did. The first strange occurrence happened late one night shortly after 2 a.m. Miguel had been wiping down the metal handrails along the corridor when he heard a sound that made him pause. A cough. It was faint, but unmistakable. The sound had come from the direction of room 417. Miguel stood still, listening carefully. The hallway remained empty. The nurse's station further down the corridor had gone quiet as well. Most of the staff had retreated into patient rooms or administrative offices. For several seconds, Miguel simply waited. Then the sound came again. Another cough, dry, weak. The kind of cough that carried the fragile weight of illness. Miguel slowly approached the door of room 417, pushing his cart quietly along the polished floor. When he reached the door, he leaned slightly toward the frosted window. The film covering the glass blurred everything beyond it, allowing only vague shapes and shadows to be seen. But Miguel noticed something unsettling. The light inside the room was off. The interior appeared completely dark, yet the coughing continued. The sound seemed to echo faintly through the door, as if someone inside the room was struggling to breathe. Miguel stepped back, uncertain of what to do. His first thought was that a patient had somehow been placed inside the room despite the locked door. Hospitals sometimes admitted emergency patients quickly, and janitorial staff were not always notified immediately. He decided to report it. Miguel pushed his cart back down the hallway toward the nurse's station and explained what he had heard. The nurse on duty glanced toward the far end of the corridor with mild confusion. According to the patient logs, room 417 was empty. It had been empty for years. Miguel accepted the explanation without argument. Perhaps the coughing had come from another room, echoing strangely through the quiet hallway. Hospitals were complex buildings. Sounds traveled unpredictably through the ventilation system and hollow walls. But the following night, at nearly the same time, Miguel heard the coughing again. And once again, it came from behind the locked door of room 417. This time, the sound lasted longer. Each cough was spaced several seconds apart, weak and labored. Miguel stood outside the door for nearly a minute, listening. The hallway remained empty. The light inside the room remained off, but the coughing continued. The situation began repeating itself night after night, always after 2 a.m, always from the same locked room. Miguel eventually decided to investigate the hospital records during a quiet shift. The janitorial office computer allowed limited access to patient logs and room assignments, primarily for cleaning documentation. He searched for room 417. The database displayed only a single notable entry. A patient had been assigned to that room 10 years earlier. The name listed in the system was Daniel Whitaker. Miguel opened the archived file. The notes attached to the patient record were brief but unsettling. Daniel Whitaker had been admitted for severe respiratory complications. His condition had required constant monitoring and medication. According to the logs, he had been stable for several days before an incident occurred during a night shift. The documentation ended abruptly with a final note written by hospital administration. Patient deceased. Cause, respiratory failure. Miguel read the record several times, trying to understand why the room had remained locked for a decade. Further searching through the hospital archive revealed another disturbing detail. Daniel Whitaker had not died immediately after his condition worsened. The patient had been accidentally left unattended during a chaotic night shift. A staff shortage and multiple emergencies had pulled nurses away from their assigned rooms. By the time someone returned to check on him hours later, Daniel Whitaker had already died. The hospital had quietly closed room 417 afterward. Officially, the room had been removed from patient use. Miguel felt an uneasy chill settle over him as he read the final lines of the report. For several nights after learning the story, he tried to ignore the coughing sounds. But they continued, each night, without fail. Eventually, the curiosity became too strong to resist. Miguel began requesting access to the room. His supervisors dismissed the idea. The room was not scheduled for cleaning and remained off limits to overnight staff. But the coughing persisted. Week after week, month after month. The sound never changed. It remained weak, persistent, and painfully human. One night, nearly a year after Miguel had first heard the strange noise, he found something unusual waiting on his cleaning cart. A small ring of keys. The janitorial office often shared spare keys between staff members, and someone had likely left them there by mistake. Miguel examined the ring carefully. One key was labeled with a small faded tag, 417. He stood motionless in the dim hallway for a long moment, staring at the number. The hospital around him felt unusually quiet that night. Even the mechanical hum of the building seemed subdued. Slowly, Miguel pushed his cart down the corridor toward the locked door. The coughing had already started. It echoed faintly through the hallway as he approached. Each step felt heavier than the last. When he finally reached the door, Miguel removed the key from the ring and inserted it into the lock. The metal turned with a quiet click. The sound of coughing continued from inside. Miguel pushed the door open. The room beyond was completely dark. He stepped inside cautiously and reached for the wall switch. The lights flickered on. The hospital room appeared perfectly clean. The bed was neatly made with crisp white sheets. The equipment had long since been removed, leaving only the basic furniture behind. For several seconds, Miguel simply stood there, scanning the empty room. Then he noticed something on the bed. The surface of the sheets remained smooth and undisturbed across most of the mattress, except for one area. Near the center of the bed, the fabric dipped downward. A clear indentation pressed into the mattress. The shape resembled the outline of a human body lying flat beneath the sheets. The depression was subtle but unmistakable. Miguel felt his breath catch in his throat as he stared at the shape. The coughing stopped. The room fell completely silent. And yet the indentation remained exactly where it was, as if someone invisible still rested quietly beneath the perfectly made hospital bed.